Oh, I know what was happening. Anyways, yeah, you guys didn't see it. Anyways, let's try one more time. Let's try one more time. I think you can do it now. So, extreme consequences of climate change in Siberia, the never seen increase in temperature this month causes huge fires. First image is the view from Sentinel satellite. The other two are images taken in the region. So here you go. Fires, fires, fires. That's happening. Gene says, Kevin, use your words. Hilarious. Hold on. I think we can make this a little better. Trying to make it better, guys. I just, bear with me. Technical issues seem to just overtake everything sometimes. Here's some, maybe possibly happy news or good intentions. I don't know. This is from Milan. Wants to build its own urban jungle of 3 million trees by 2030. The city will plant trees on 10 million square meters of rooftop, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, this is really awesome. However, the only way that this is going to make any difference is if you stop using fossil fuels. So there's that part that you really have to worry about, right? Really have to worry about that part. The trees only help if you stop using the fossil fuels. Osama number 5, don't yell fire on a crowded planet. Indeed. But the green tower looks pretty awesome. I mean, all of that is very nice. I'm all for, yes, let's plant trees and all kinds of good stuff. And let's, regreen, rewild, etc. areas. But you have to stop the burning of fossil fuels in conjunction with all of that, or none of it actually matters. Here you go. More climate change destruction in news not making headlines this week. Flooding in Assam and Nepal kills hundreds, displaces millions. 1/3 of Bangladesh underwater in one of the worst deluges to hit region. Worst flooding in decades and endangers China's Three Gorges Dam. 40 million people affected. So I've been covering this. Again, to the climate is always changing people, or to the climate change isn't real or a real threat, people. How many 500-year or 1,000-year floods have we seen in the last 3 years? We had one right here in the U.S. last summer. We've had every single year. We've pretty much had 500 or 1,000-year floods, or multiple 500 or 1,000-year floods every single year until this year. We haven't yet this year. I don't think so. Unless, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But, we've got half the year left. G. Demmer says, green tower good, using fossil fuels to build it bad. Indeed. All this looks like, super cool green tech landscaping. Things for people to do. More things for people to do, right? And what we need is something more like everybody stay home and stop doing what you're doing, right? Stay home, stop driving, don't go outside, stop burning fossil fuels, stop doing all the things as much as you possibly can. Stop doing it. Anyways, let's move on. More environmental destruction or attempted environmental destruction by the Trump administration. Again, this is something that the Democrats aren't really Like I don't hear, all the resistance people, I don't hear them really like taking up issue with all the stuff that Trump is doing. I hear the climate change people are aware of it. But as far as like just rank and file Democrats or actual Democrats that are in the government or in Congress, like I don't hear them, saying like, oh, we have to roll back these rules that Trump is doing. We have to roll back all this deregulation that's happening. I don't hear it. I don't really hear it. Maybe from one or two people, maybe from AOC, possibly from Bernie Sanders, maybe from a couple of people. For the most part, they're all on board with this stuff. This is all fine. Trump administration seeks to greenlight controversial Alaska mine. A final decision can come in as little as 30 days. This is from July 24th. The Trump administration on Friday proposed approving a key permit to build an Alaska copper and gold mine that the Obama administration had tried to block over environmental concerns. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers released a final environmental impact statement on the Pebble mine, located near the world's largest natural salmon runs. That would allow construction of the mine and associated developments, including an 82-mile road system. It paves the way for a final decision as little as 30 days for the project, which is owned by Canada's Northern Dynasty Minerals. Yeah, Canada, equal opportunity employer on destroying the planet. In fact, Canadian corporations love to destroy the planet. They're super, super hyped on destroying the planet. During the Obama administration, the controversial project opposed by the fishing industry, Alaska natives, and the environmentalists appeared dead. The Obama administration tried to prevent permitting for Pebble construction after a study it had launched concluded the mine would irreparably damage the salmon-rich habitat and the people and the wildlife that depend on it. For the Army Corps to rubber stamp a massive toxic open pit mine in the headwaters of a national food source just doesn't make sense, said Andy Wink, Executive Director of Bristol Bay Regional Seafood Development Association. Yeah, so that's happening. That's happening. And it's all good. For business and corporations, it's all good. This is why they really don't care about Trump. They meaning the powers that be, act like, oh, Trump is so bad. They love this stuff. They're all for this stuff. They don't mind at all if they do. And yes, they all know that climate change is bad, and maybe they're just trying to get a couple more dollars in the kitty before it gets really bad. I don't know what that's going to do for you. Have a good time while it's going down. More in environmental racism. This is from today. Environmental racism is killing Americans of color. Climate change will make it worse. We've turned a blind eye to a public health time bomb in already vulnerable communities. Oh my God, they're doing it to me again. Every time. The Guardian was so nice and free, and now they're jumping on the please subscribe to our newspaper train so you can read our stories. I Can't Breathe is echoing across the planet, filled with anguish and pain. These haunting words are spotlighting the systemic racism that has infected unjust policing practices, putting black and brown communities in its crosshairs. As police take lives with chokeholds and asphyxiate others with knees on their necks, we are reminded that racism is literally killing our people and planet. Communities of color have appealed for decades to politicians, policymakers, and environmental organizations that they can't breathe, only to be ignored. The simple fact is that black, brown, indigenous, and lower wealth communities have disproportionately been the dumping grounds for our country's deadliest toxic pollutants. Of course, if you can't move out of the polluted neighborhoods, or if you can't move away from the toxic factory that's spewing out smoke and sludge that's right down the street from you, of course you're going to be affected. We have instituted economic and environmental apartheid through redlining, restrictive covenants, and unfair zoning practices. Yes, if you have the dollars and the economic mobility, you can live far away from the environmental, industrial destruction that happens every day. Studies show that Hispanics, Asians, American Indians, Alaska Natives, and especially African Americans experience higher risks of harm, including premature death from air pollution. Approximately 75 million people of color, or 57%, live in counties with at least one failing grade for ozone and or particle pollution, compared with 38% of whites. Let's be clear, we got here because we turned a blind eye to the public health time bomb that has been exploding in our most vulnerable communities. And as a result, we now have an equally dangerous climate bomb that is accelerated by fossil fuels, racially tinged transportation development, and deforestation. Once again, our most vulnerable are most at risk. Indeed, and this is going on a global level, right? Because the industrialized West, or the first world countries, if you will, whatever you want to call them, are now offshoring all of the pollution, right? The production and the pollution to other countries, right? So we're closing down coal factories and look what we're doing in the West, how we're going for renewables, and we're, trying to clean up the air and the environment, but we're basically exporting this pollution and environmental destruction to other places: Brazil, China, Indonesia, Africa, right? So all of these destructive practices that we used to do in our own backyard, we're shipping them somewhere else, but they're still happening. But that happens on another microcosm, on a smaller level in the United States, right? So places where it's like coal mines and chemical factories and clothing factories and all sorts of production and industry happens in places where poorer people live. Most of those poorer people are people of color. They can't move away. They have to live next to the factory where they work or live close to it. They have to breathe in the toxic air. They have to drink the toxic water, a la Flint, Michigan. Keith Hayes says, I should pay attention. Doing 3 things at once. That's all right, man. You sound like me. I'm sometimes multitasking to the detriment of anything that I'm doing. Osama number 5, trying to develop a taste for mealworms. Let me know how that goes. Poppy Davis, export waste, buy cheap shit made in China. Recipe for success, indeed. Yeah, and even though, I think I was just reading an article the other day where the Chinese citizens, 80% of them think climate change is a serious issue, right? So they're way more concerned about climate change than we are. We Americans, right? I imagine that it has something to do with the fact that they're in the middle of all the pollution, right? It's the same thing that happened in the 70s, right? We had a big environmental push and we had lots of regulations enacted and lots of agencies created around protecting the environment or protecting our air or protecting the water or protecting people from getting sick from all the industry that creates all the stuff that we love to have and buy. It was that way because you could actually see the smog in the sky. You were breathing it in. People were getting sick from lead poisoning, right? It was tangible. It was something that you could touch. And now that we've cleaned up a lot of things about our industries, or cleaned up a lot of things about our lifestyles, or especially our cities, and where people live, people aren't that concerned about it anymore. Why? Because those regulations and those agencies actually worked. But I imagine that people in India and China think that pollution and climate change are a serious problem, probably because they're breathing in pollution every single day, and so they're like, yeah, this is crap. I don't want to live like this. Keith Hayes, the Chinese could lose a lot of agriculture if things get warmer. Of course. Well, I think a lot of people and places are going to lose agriculture if things get warmer. Of course. Let's keep going. And just as a reminder that climate change actually hits everybody, even the wealthy are not immune from climate change. However, they do generally have the money to relocate or rebuild their house, or have multiple residences or afford hotel rooms when an emergency happens, right? So they're much more cushioned from the blow of these extreme weather events. But anyways, this is a post from somebody named Aaron Dodd. Remember when climate change denialists said that it was all rubbish and that our expensive beachfront homes are not at risk? Good times. And this is from Australia, I imagine, or I believe. So obviously lots of erosion going on in many beachfronts, especially where wealthy people like to live and build their houses. Much more erosion than is normal. We have 119 watching, 36 likes. Please like the video. Like it up, and let other people know we're here. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Let's move on to this interesting story from July 19th. China's first climate striker warned, give it up or you can't go back to school. Wow, okay. Wei Huangyi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, but who took part in the Fridays for Future protest, says she has been told she cannot return to school unless she stops her activism. No climate activism for you. Hold on one second. Takes initiative, an independent thinker, engages in study outside of her curriculum, cares deeply about her community and the world around her, stands up for her convictions and beliefs. These are all qualities that would appear to make Wao Hongyi a suitable candidate for studying at her dream institution of Harvard University. For Wao, however, those qualities may scuttle her chance of even graduating from high school or taking college entrance examinations. As the first young person in China to engage in Greta Thunberg's inspired Fridays for Future climate strikes, Wei 17 has become a target for the authorities, who see that activism as a challenge to their control. Wao claims that she has been told by authorities to ditch her climate activism as a condition for her restarting studies at Guangxi Normal University affiliated high school in Guilin, where she studied until late 2018. Wao, who also goes by the English name Howie, suspended her studies in December 2018 after being told she was not suitable for the international program there, and decided to study for the test of English as a foreign language and U.S. college admissions SAT tests on her own. But following the wishes of her parents and with dreams of pursuing higher education, she has been attempting in recent months to re-enter the school. Her parents have been called several times by provincial education authorities. Wao told The Guardian, urging them to stop her climate activism and not to conduct interviews with foreign media. Wow. Wao said her principal, Li Linbo, also told her in a meeting on May 29th that she must promise to end her climate activism before being readmitted, a claim corroborated by her father. Several attempts to reach a principal, including calls to his office and personal number, as well as faxed questions, were not responded to. I don't want to stop Wow said over climate activism. I want more people to know. While currently the top global carbon dioxide emitter, China is expected to meet its Paris Agreement pledge of peaking carbon emissions at or before 2030. China's leader Xi Jinping has also put the development of an ecological civilization at the core of his policies, which would appear to be a natural fit with Wow's own obsession. So this is important to know and understand. Again, the soft denialism of governments and institutions that admit that climate change is a problem even go as far as to say maybe we're in a climate emergency, or to center climate policies in their platforms or in their messaging. However, coming down on people who, regular people who are out protesting about climate change, right? We want to appear that we're doing everything. We want to appear that we're taking this seriously and we're doing things, right? We want to appear that way, but we don't want people to actually, be aware of what's really going on, right? We don't want the somebody clanging the clarion bell of climate catastrophe, right? We don't want that, because then things could get out of control. People could realize that maybe we're not doing everything we could do. People could realize that maybe we're not being true to our claims of caring about climate change. People could maybe wake up or understand that we're saying, one thing over here and doing another thing over here, right? See Canada, see the US, see, every other European country, right? So what China wants is the ability to destroy the planet or destroy the environment however or whenever they see fit, while also trying to tell people that they care about the environment. It's a vicious game. Arcadius, how you doing? Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. How is it possible that the last ice age did not trigger mass extinction? Are you asking me that? I don't know about mass extinction. It's usually the warming periods of the planet that trigger mass extinction events. In fact, I think every single time. Ice ages and ice cold events on the planet don't necessarily trigger mass extinctions, although I'm sure it kills many species or forces species to move or adapt or whatever. But as far as causing mass extinctions, I don't think that they do that. Thank you so much, though, for the super chat, Arcadius. But Arcadius also, if I think you can look at you can look at that in climate science. You can Google that, you can look that up. Over what kind of extinction events happen during ice ages and what kind of extinction events happen during global warming events. Okay, let's keep going. This is from last year, but just has to be reiterated, over and over again. Climate change, current warming unparalleled in 2,000 years. Somebody asked a question on Twitter or something about... Oh, no, somebody was asking me in the comments, what do you say to people that say the climate is always changing? This is what you say to them. Something like this, current warming unparalleled in 2,000 years, right? So there's a graph in this article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but they show that famous historic events like the Little Ice Age don't compare with the scale of warming seen over the last century. The research suggests that the current warming rate is higher than any observed previously. The scientists say it shows many of the arguments used by climate skeptics are no longer valid. No longer valid. As in, not anymore, as in never. When scientists have surveyed the climatic history of our world over the past centuries, a number of key areas have stood out. These range from the Roman warm period, which ran from AD 250 to AD 400 and saw unusually warm weather across Europe, to the famed Little Ice Age, which saw temperatures drop for centuries from the 1300s. The events were seen by some as evidence that the world has warmed and cooled many times over the centuries, and that the warming seen in the world since the Industrial Revolution was part of that pattern and therefore nothing to be alarmed about. Three new research papers show that argument is on shaky ground. But listen, if you're seeing this graph, this is all you need to know. If somebody's like, climate is always changing. Look, this is the climate always changing over the last 2,000 years. These are the periods of warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, cold. Whammo, warm, and whammo, warm. So we're breaking out of the boundaries, the normal boundaries of climate oscillation, if you will. The climate oscillates regularly between warm and cold periods, but we are in a distinctly warm period, and we keep getting warmer, and it continues to go up and up and up every single year. This is unprecedented, and this is not natural. This is not the climate is always changing. This is human beings burning fossil fuels, and look what's happened. This is very simple cause and effect. If you cannot see with your own, bulgy eyes or whatever, that this is very simple cause and effect. Carbon dioxide, burn carbon dioxide, here goes the temperatures. Temperatures follow the carbon dioxide, blah, 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 blah. Even Homer Simpson can understand that one. Climate change is simple. So yeah, they just go on to explain that whole thing. They just go on to explain that whole, the preposterousness of that whole idea. And lastly, from Bloomberg News, freaked out scientists and gleeful captains of fossil fuel tankers are now sailing through climate history in the melting polar regions. This is from yesterday. On a sparkling day on May 18th, the nearly 300-meter-long tanker Christophe de Margerie set sail from the northern Russian port of Sabeta, crossing the so-called Northern Sea Route in the Arctic waters. In just under 3 weeks, it moored at the Chinese port of Yankou, unloading its shipment of liquefied natural gas. That relatively routine journey has now entered the record books. The earliest date a cargo ship took what's usually an ice-blocked route. It's yet another sign of how climate change is shrinking the Arctic. Here's the route. Around the same time that the gas reached the port, a ship called the Polar Stern was also sailing in Arctic waters, but it was loaded with about 100 climate scientists from some 20 countries engaged in an exhaustive, year-long examination of the warming environment. To put it another way, the crew of the scientific ship is trying to understand why the tanker was able to leave so early in the season and what it means for the future of the planet. Oh, we have to understand why and what it means. Okay. I don't think you need to get on a boat and sail to the Arctic to figure that one out. The Arctic is rich in natural resources like fossil fuel and already under significant climate stress. Warming more than twice as fast as the rest of the planet, the more the Arctic warms and melts, the more humans build industrial infrastructure, mine metals, and produce oil and gas-emitting greenhouse gases that accelerate the warming and melting. The two vessels tell the tale of a tug of war now playing out in Earth's last frontier. One is looking for clues to climate change, and the other is racing to exploit that change for financial profit. It's another kind of feedback loop with ships passing in melting waters. Isn't that poetic? Unlike other areas of the planet, the Arctic is so inaccessible that there's very little data to predict with precision how the ice cap will change under rapid warming. I don't know. It's going to melt. We need to really get precise with the amount of it's going to melt. Researchers on the Polar Stern's Mosaic mission, the largest polar expedition in history and the first modern vessel to spend a full winter close to the North Pole, are aiming to fill in the gaps of knowledge. Scientists are certain that the Arctic ice is disappearing. Well, yes, of course. The shrinking ice cap accelerates warming globally. As Greenland and other Arctic glaciers lose ice cap, they help raise sea levels, potentially exposing millions of people to flooding. The way this is written is very like National Geographic or like, science science exhibit at the local museum. Like, scientists say that the ice caps are melting. They might raise sea levels. It's all very interesting what's going on up there. No link to the very real life-threatening situation that might occur because of this. But anyways, nearly every dramatic headline-grabbing effect of climate change, from alarming coastal erosion to intense and frequent fires, is already happening in the Arctic at a fast pace and at a giant magnitude. These individual things are part of a very complex system that's changing dramatically, said Guido Gross, head of the Permafrost Research Institute at the Alfred Wegener Institute. Helmholtz Institute of Polar and Sea Research, or AWI, because it is very remote. People have a hard time understanding how it might affect our life in more temperate regions, but it will. About a third of the size of the Christophe de Margerie gas tanker, the Polarstern is almost like a second home for polar scientists. The ship has been sailing Arctic and Antarctic waters for almost four decades. Spending months on the blue and white research vessel means sharing a tiny cabin with another scientist, sleeping in tight bunk beds, and sipping infinite amounts of tea and coffee in the ship's red saloon. A satellite internet connection allows the researchers to communicate with loved ones on the mainland via WhatsApp. On the long winter days, Agatha Christie-style murder mystery games are organized to kill the hours. This is all very, fine and dandy. The centuries-old quest to establish a northern navigation route that would connect Russia with Asian ports, the one taken by the Christophe de Margerie, helps illustrate the Arctic's transformation. That route has long been a strategic priority for Russia, which accounts for over half of the total Arctic coastline. The reason is obvious. The Northern Sea Route, stretching more than 3,000 nautical miles between the Barents Sea and the Bering Strait, provides a shortcut to Pacific ports. Shippers could send oil, gas, metals such as nickel and palladium to Asia more quickly, potentially shaving costs. The issue, of course, is that the Arctic waters are covered with ice nearly year-round, with only a few areas completely ice-free, and even in the summer. A trend that has historically frustrated shippers and explorers alike. An Englishman named Sir Hugh Willoughby gave the route a shot in 1553. He described very evil weather and terrible whirlwinds as he attempted to find a northeastern passage. A year later, his diaries were found along with his frozen body and the rest of his crew on the Kola Bay in a place he named the Heaven of Death. So you can see these different attempts at traversing this route. 409 days in the 1800s. 1,155 days in the 1800s. Otto Schmidt, 1932, 65 days. Anyways, I'm not going to read this whole thing because it's extremely long. Most scientific models suggest that the first ice-free Arctic summer could happen around the middle of the century. Hurdy. If you want a knee slapper, there's a big one right there, because look where we're at. This is 2020. This is the Arctic sea ice extent on July 21st, 2020. Again, extent does not have anything to do with thickness. Very, very little extent, but this is also very little thickness as well. Anyways, I'm sure it's all very lovely and fine that these scientists are up there on a boat telling us stuff we already know. So, I don't know. I'm sure it's a good time for all. I'm sure it's very scientifically rewarding. Yeah. Keith Hayes, fascinating place. I'm sure it's very fascinating. I'm sure it's, probably a very interesting place to go and travel and look at. Although I seriously want to dissuade people from traveling to the Arctic and going to look at the Arctic. Can you just leave the Arctic alone? Just leave it alone. Just stay at home. Look at look at pictures or satellites. Just stop. Just don't travel to the Arctic. Don't do an eco tour to the Arctic or Alaska or the Caribbean or Mexico. Don't do it. Just halt the eco tours, please. If you want to do one on foot, that's totally different, or on bike, go for it. But no boating. If you want to sail by sailboat up to the Arctic, go for it. But I seriously hope that people aren't taking eco tours to the Arctic anytime soon. Osama, it's fascinating because there are no humans. Exactly. Hey guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and you can support the channel. The links below, PayPal, Patreon, Square. Also, if you'd like to watch the live streams, you can watch the live streams on my Patreon channel. You can subscribe for as little as $1. So hopefully I will see you over there, and thanks so much.